So this is my all new PC build for gaming and productivity. Let's check it out. Alright, let's start with the engine behind the whole build, the CPU and how I kept it cool. This is where most of your system's power comes from, so I knew I wanted something that could handle everything from high-end gaming to productivity without breaking a sweat, and still looking good in a case like this. At the center of this build is AMD's Ryzen 9800 X3D. It's part of AMD's latest 9000 series, and the XD version means it's stacked with 3D V-Cache. That makes it a monster in gaming, giving way better lows and smoother frames than a standard chip. For day-to-day productivity, it's more than enough horsepower. Now with that power comes heat, so I knew cooling had to be both effective and reliable. I went with the Lian Galahad 2 LCD 360 AIO and replaced the 3 standard Lian TL fans with 3 LCD reverse fans. I set these fans intake for a couple of reasons. First, the 360mm radiator gives a lot more cooling surface, allowing for better heat distribution. This keeps my chip in the mid-60s under gaming and under 70 when pushing heavy rendering. It also features a cool 2.1-inch LCD display right on the water block, so I can display CPU temps or show custom animations. It's not strictly necessary, but in a full glass case that's also designed to impress, it makes it stand out from other cases out there. And also, the tubing is rigid and routed cleanly along the radiator, avoiding sag, giving the build a crisp, streamlined look. The downside, all of these added features and components, especially from Lian, come with a price. A more realistic, budget-friendly approach would be to replace the fans for Corsair or Arctic P12s, or even just stick with the standard Unifans. And since we're on the topic of budget-friendly alternatives, you can use other liquid cooling AIO like the Thermalright Peerless Assassin 120 SE or the ID Cooling FX360 liquid cooler. Both of these options are great from a cooling and aesthetic standpoint, but in my case, I did like any other sane person would do, and I emptied all my pockets to go with Lian aesthetics. Once the CPU and cooler were sorted, it was time to pick up the board, the literal backbone of the system. And trust me, choosing the right motherboard makes your build experience way easier or a total nightmare. The motherboard I went with here is the Gigabyte X870 Eagle Wi-Fi 7. This is an ATX board which fills out the O11 Vision nicely. This also gives you a lot more breathing room than an ITX board would. ITX boards are small and can really look clean in the right case, but they come with compromises. Cramming everything into that tiny footprint makes building and kilo management much harder. Headers are closely tucked under GPUs, cables are bent in awkward positions, and airflow gets impacted. By using an ATX board, I didn't have to worry about any of that. The board fills out the case perfectly and there's space for everything. Features-wise, it's solid. It has a PCIe 5.0 for future-proofing both GPU and NVMe storage, Wi-Fi 7, multiple M2 slots for storage expansion. Only one has a heatsink out of the box, but that's plenty for a main drive. The con here is aesthetics. This motherboard is pretty neutral. If you're going all in on a white theme build, then something like the ASUS Strix motherboard is a good option. It comes in white and would look much cleaner and pop more through the glass. But for me, the Eagle had the features I needed. It worked well with the 9800 X3D out of the box and wasn't impossible to find in stock. With the board in, the next step was all about speed and responsiveness, so that's where memory and storage comes in. For memory, I went with 32GB of T4 DDR5 at 6000 MHz. That speed pairs well with the Ryzen, keeping everything quick and responsive. 32GB is a spot where I truly believe is enough for all of your needs: gaming, editing, and multitasking without overspending. I consider 64GB, but for my workload, it would have been overkill. And for storage, I chose the crucial P3 Plus 2TB NVMe SSD. It's a Gen 4 drive, which gives me quick load times and plenty of space for all my games and projects. Now, this is where things start to come together. Let's talk about graphics, probably the most important decision for anyone focused on gaming. For GPU, this build sports the ASUS Prime 5070 Ti, which combines solid performance with subtle aesthetics. It's a 2.5 slot card with a 304mm length, making it substantial but still manageable in a high-end case like the O11 Vision. When it came to choosing a graphics card, I landed on this one for a couple of reasons. First, ASUS is considered pretty much one of the top tier brands in the GPU space. They're known for durability, solid cooling solutions, and attention to detail and design. Second, the price. Most RTX 5070 Ti cards on the market right now in Canada are sitting close to $1,000 Canadian, and many of them come with inflated prices above MSRP, but I was able to grab the ASUS model right at MSRP. Performance-wise, this card is tuned for 1440p. In almost any demanding modern title, you're looking at well over 100 frames per second. In Horizon Forbidden West, I was able to achieve 100 to 120 FPS on very high with DLSS on. And with frame generation enabled, that jumped to around 160 to 170 frames per second. And if you didn't know, DLSS is NVIDIA's tech that uses AI to upscale frames. Basically, it lets the GPU render a slightly lower resolution frame, then polishes it with AI, so it looks almost as good as native. That means smoother gameplay without a huge drop in visuals. And then you've got frame generation, which is like the GPU guessing what the next frame should look like in between real ones. It adds a touch of latency, but for single player games, it's a nice boost. In other titles like Black Myth: Wukong, which is notoriously demanding, you can expect around 80 to 100 FPS native. But if you enable DLSS and frame generation, you can achieve about 200 to 240 FPS. So with all the main components in, it was time to put everything into the case. And this one might just be my favorite part of the whole setup. To finish off the build, let's talk about the case, the Lian O11 Vision. You've got tempered glass on 3 sides, so every component inside is on display. That means cable management has to be on point, but when it's all cleaned up, it honestly looks so good. On the practical side, the O11 Vision has plenty of space. Even with a full-size ATX board, a triple fan GPU, and 360mm AIO radiator, I didn't feel cramped when putting everything together. With the bottom intake and side-mounted radiator pulling cool air in, and the rear fans exhausting, temps stay under control. And because Lian designed this case with a wide clearance and smart fan placement, the system runs cool without needing fans to blast at full speed, which is why this whole build stays whisper quiet. Now for some drawbacks, this case isn't cheap. You're looking at around 150 to 170 USD, depending on availability. But for the build quality, it feels justified. It's the kind of case you buy when you want your PC to look as good as it performs, and for me, it was worth every dollar. Overall, I couldn't be happier with how this build turned out. There are always little things you can change, maybe a different case for portability or more budget-friendly fans, but honestly, this strikes the perfect balance between performance, aesthetics, and usability. Most importantly, it's a system that feels personalized to me. From the components to the clean presentation, is exactly what I wanted out of a high-end build. So if you're thinking about putting together something similar, hopefully this gives you a clear idea of what to expect, the good, the bad, and the real-world performance you can look forward to. But until then, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.